Veridan, the Green Guide by My Head in the Clouds, Not Coming Down, a Boku no Hero Academia fanfic. Chapter 31. Suicide. Izuku couldn't help the pool of dread in his stomach as he followed Eraserhead across the rooftops. What had he done? Was Eraser really going to force him to stop vigilantism? But if he was going to force him to stop, then why didn't he just hand him over to the police? Not that the police were actually going to be able to stop him, considering he wasn't technically breaking any vigilantism laws. But still, that would have been the easiest course of action, and Eraserhead was logical enough to see that. So what was he doing? When they were a few blocks away from where the fight had been, Eraser stopped and turned around. I wanted to apologize. Izuku's spiraling thoughts sputtered to a stop. What? Eraser sighed. Last week when I saw you, I yelled at you trying to get you to stop. I was worried and scared, but that's no excuse. I shouldn't have gotten angry with you, and I'm sorry. But Izuku was shocked. But you didn't do anything wrong. It's me who should be apologizing. I mean, I was just being stupid, and I really shouldn't have been going out with a broken arm anyway. But I did what you said. It wasn't about the arm, though we will still be talking about that later. Eraser started, but then did a double take. Wait, what did I say? You told me to make a friend? Izuku said. But then his eyes widened as he realized he couldn't actually remember what Eraser had said. Wait, maybe you didn't actually tell me to make a friend? Maybe you just said you were worried I didn't have any friends. I could have sworn, but did you even say that? You what? Eraser seemed tired and confused, but not unhappy. You went out and made a friend because you thought I told you to? Well, when he said it like that, it sounded silly. Yes? Eraser snorted and Izuku blushed. Hey, it's not like it was a bad thing. Didn't say it was. Eraser sounded like he was smiling. So, you get along okay? Mm-hmm. Izuku grinned. He doesn't care about... well, he's different than the kids at my old school. He's actually giving me a chance. His quirk is really cool, too, though it has kind of a big drawback. I wonder if I could help him with that somehow. Shoto hid a smile as Veridan started muttering unintelligibly. He couldn't believe that the problem child had interpreted his trying to keep him alive as a challenge to make a friend, but he wasn't unhappy about it. Seriously, the kid needed some positive influences in his life, which brought Shoto back to the real reason behind this talk. I'm glad I could help you make a friend, problem child, but that's not why I wanted to talk to you. Veridan froze and looked up at Shota, obviously frightened. He didn't want to scare the kid, but it was a pretty heavy topic. Shoto sighed and sat down on the roof, gesturing for Veridan to sit down beside him. Actually, on second thought, a roof probably wasn't the best place for this kind of conversation, but it was too late to change locations now. The kid hesitated for a long moment before sitting down, still obviously nervous, and not taking his eyes off Shota for a moment. Damn, that kid really was expecting to be hurt. He took a deep breath. People would care if you died, kid. Veridan froze again, obviously not expecting that. Shoto sighed. I know this isn't the easiest thing to talk about, and you don't have to talk about it with me, but you should talk about it with someone. I think it's pretty obvious just by the way you fight that you don't care if you die, but our argument the other day really cinched it. Veridan, you're suicidal, aren't you? The kid stared at him for a long moment, then burst into tears. Oh no, Shoto had been expecting denial or deflection, or even just sad acceptance. He didn't know what to do with a crying child. Maybe he should have left this to another hero? Mike was much better with people than he was. Shoto awkwardly started rubbing the kid's back. That was something people did, right? It was supposed to be comforting, wasn't it? After about a minute, a choked-sounding chuckle broke through Veridan's sobs. That kind of ruins the plan, Eraserhead. Shoto's hand stopped moving, and he felt his stomach drop. The kid had a plan? Yet he knew that might be a possibility, but he had been hoping the kid wasn't at that stage of things yet. What plan, kid? No one was supposed to know. Veridan smiled sadly. This whole vigilantism thing. If people knew I killed myself, it would cause too many problems. My childhood friend would get in trouble for suicide baiting me. My mom would blame herself. He chuckled humorously. Guess that's a stupid reason not to just take a swan dive, huh? I don't think any reason to stay alive is stupid, Eraser said seriously, though he would have to ask more about the childhood friend if he could get the kid to trust him a little more. So the plan was that if you get killed... When? Eraser interrupted. When I get killed, everyone would just think, oh, the useless Doku was being an idiot and tried to be a hero again. No wonder he got himself killed. Not, oh no, why did he commit suicide? But, you knowing the plan kinda ruins it. What about me wanting you to stay alive? Shoto asked gently. Does that ruin the plan too? He heard Veridan's breath hitch slightly, but when he spoke again, his voice was resigned. You're only saying that because it's your job as a hero to save me. I don't say things I don't mean, kid. You know that. Shoto countered. When I said that I'd like you better alive, it's because it's the truth. You're a good kid. You're smart. You pick things up quickly, and you got a lot of potential. It'd be sad to see you throw all that away. Veridan shook his head. You'll move on, just like Mom will. It won't take you long after I'm gone before you realize how useless I was. And then you'll realize that I made the right decision. You don't have to feel guilty about that, though. I wouldn't blame you guys or anything. You're not useless, kid, Shoto said earnestly. You helped a lot of people these last couple of months, and even if you hadn't, you're still just a kid. You shouldn't have to do anything to justify being alive. Veridan shrugged. Agree to disagree. Shoto rolled his eyes. Doesn't apply in this situation, problem child. To his surprise, Veridan gave him a shit-eating grin and looked him right in the eye. Agree to disagree. Izuku was surprised he was apparently confident enough to joke around with Eraser, but now that the whole wanting to die thing was out in the open, it was like he didn't have anything left to lose. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off his chest, and he was able to relax. Not that he wasn't still terrified that Eraser was going to abandon him, because he was, but it was like his reason for being a vigilante had been this huge wall between them, and talking about it had torn it down, somehow. Or maybe he was just using humor as a coping mechanism. It was a distinct possibility. Eraser muttered something that sounded suspiciously like teenagers, before gripping Izuku's shoulder and turning him slightly, so they were face to face. I would care if you died, problem child, and so would a lot of other people. What would your new friend think if you suddenly disappeared? Izuku bit his lip and thought of Kaminari. He'd get over it. He's got a lot of other friends. He'd barely even notice if I was gone. Eraser sighed, but let go of him, and went back to staring at the skyline. They sat in silence for a few minutes before he spoke again. I used to be depressed too, you know. Izuku looked at Eraser with wide eyes. What? Eraser nodded and kept looking out at the city. When I was around your age, a close friend of mine was killed in action during a work study. I never really got over it. At least, not completely. I cut myself off from everyone, even President Mike, who was close to him too. Nothing seemed worth it anymore. Izuku couldn't believe it. But you're so strong. You can be strong and still be sad, kid, Eraser said quietly. A lot of heroes go through it. Sometimes there's something that leads to it, like there was with me. But sometimes things just don't work right in your brain, and that's that. It's not something you need to be ashamed of, but it is something you should get help for. I don't deserve to get help, Izuku muttered. Why not? Izuku looked at Eraser again, to find that he had taken off his yellow goggles and hung them around his neck, so Izuku could see his sincere expressions. He couldn't believe it, but Eraser seemed to genuinely care. It was confusing. Izuku took a deep breath. If Eraser could open up about his friend, then maybe Izuku could open up too. Just a little. I can't do anything. He picked at the fraying threads around the hole in his jeans as the way to avoid looking at Eraser. I don't want to waste a therapist's time when the world would be better off without me anyway. Who told you that? Eraser sounded slightly angry. Who told you the world would be better off without you in it? Was it that childhood friend you mentioned before? It wasn't just him, Izuku said. I mean, he was part of it, but the other kids at school said the same thing, and even some of the teachers. Only a few of them would say it to my face, though, but I heard some of their conversations when I passed by the teacher's lounge. I even got yelled at by an old man at the train once. Kid. It's fine, though. Izuku's voice cracked, but he smiled anyways. They were right, even if I didn't want to believe it at first. At least this way, I can still help people before I go, right? Just because everyone believes something doesn't make it true, kid. Eraser put a hand on his shoulder, which made Izuku lose control of his tears and start crying again. Sometimes, actually, most of the time, people are idiots. No one deserves to be told to die, especially not a kid. How long has this been going on? Izuku shrugged. He couldn't just say it was since he was 4, because that would make it obvious that it was because of his lack of quirk. And despite his decision to open up to Eraser, Izuku didn't think he'd be able to handle it if Eraser abandoned him once it came out that he was quirkless. So instead, he changed the subject. What did you do to get better after your friend died? Because, well, you don't seem like you're depressed anymore. Eraser glared at him, but Izuku just gave him a small smile. So he sighed and accepted the new topic. I threw myself into saving people, just like you have. Living for other people works pretty well, until you learn how to live for yourself. You're saying it like saving people is a crutch. Eraser shrugged. Maybe it is. You've got other reasons too, I'm sure. But while you seem to be fighting villains as a way to kill yourself, it also seems to be giving you something to live for. At least for now. Izuku thought about it for a moment. He did wake up every morning excited for the next night, which wasn't something he'd ever experienced before becoming a vigilante. He enjoyed spending time with the heroes, even if most of that time was spent fighting or running away, which was way different than his former classmates. He looked forward to saving people, and the extra exercise probably didn't hurt either. Let's say you're right, Izuku said finally. What are you going to do about it? As much as I want to wrap you in bubble wrap and force you to stop, I'm not willing to take away the one thing you're living for, Eraser grumbled. I just want you to promise me that you won't do anything impulsive, okay? If you have a lead, especially about the villain factory, tell me. And if things get worse, and you feel like waiting for a villain to kill you is taking too long, you can talk to me. Understood? Izuku stared at him with wide eyes. Really? Eraser rolled his eyes, but rubbed Izuku's head fondly. Yeah, kid. Leaving a suicidal kid to fight his emotions alone would be completely illogical. Not to mention dangerous. I'd much rather read your notebook than your obituary. I like having you around, kid. Izuku sniffed, and turned away from Eraser so he could wipe his eyes. I guess I'll see you later then. It was dark, so maybe Izuku was just imagining Eraser's smile as they got to their feet. Sure thing, kid. Now, go find another hero to pelt with marbles. Some of the others are getting jealous. Izuku laughed and ran towards the edge of the roof, before remembering something and stopped. Eraser? What, kid? That friend you mentioned in high school. The one that was the catalyst for your depression, Izuku hesitated. How did they die? Eraser had put his goggles back on, so Izuku couldn't read his expression as well, but he thought he looked sad. I'll tell you later, kid. For now, just focus on staying alive.